For hundreds of years, God's chosen people were enslaved in Egypt. And they cried out to God, asking for freedom. God eventually sent Moses to them to lead them into that freedom. And he did it in very many awesome ways. You can think of the Passover, the parting of the Red Sea, and so on. But then came the desert. It was a place lacking in many things. The people started to get thirsty and hungry, and it was hard. They complained to Moses, even saying, "Why did you ever make us leave Egypt?" Forgetting, of course, they were slaves there. Even Moses grumbled to God, looking for guidance on how to lead the people. And they wondered, is the Lord in our midst or not? Now, if you remember the story, you know God had not abandoned them, right? He went on to provide them with water, as we heard in the reading, with bread and meat during their time in the desert. He took care of them, and he did lead them to the promised land. And while their time in the desert was difficult, it purified their faith. It built their trust in God. So now the question, is the Lord in our midst or not? It seems to be relevant for us too. I mean, things are pretty chaotic right now if you're paying attention to the news and so on. And with this new coronavirus pandemic, things for us are more uncertain than they have been in a long time. I mean, in my lifetime, I've never seen cancellations like this or panic like this, at least not here in our country. So with our politics as they are, with the disease spreading, with the falling stock market, with the supermarket shelves emptying, with fear about the future, some people are wondering, is the Lord in our midst or not? Well, here at Mass, in this church, we are reminded that yes, most definitely, the Lord is in our midst. As he was for the Israelites in the desert, so he is here with us. In fact, he's more present for us than he ever was for them. Jesus Christ, God incarnate, our Holy Eucharist, is right here in our tabernacle. What's more, if we are prepared, he will soon be within our very bodies in Holy Communion. And as the Lord purified the faith of his people in the desert, so the Lord may use this chaotic time in our country and around the world in various ways to help us to trust and to have deeper faith in him. But how? How? Well, it's a thing. Only God knows what good could come out of this terrible circumstance. But I had three thoughts about ways God might use this troubling time for our good. The first benefit I can imagine is this. It gives us an opportunity to be freed from our idols. And this is good, because it's the greatest commandment, right? It's the first one in the Decalogue, and it's Jesus' greatest commandment. Love God above all, with all that we have and all that we are. But the truth is, we put a lot of things before God in our lives. And as the world starts to kind of shut down in various ways, many of those things are taken away from us. Wealth and the pursuit of it, the disordered pursuit of it, for example. Now, to a degree, if you watch the stock market, that's kind of melting away, at least for now. Or sports, games, tournaments, practices of all kind have pretty rapidly come to a halt, from the professional leagues all the way down to our local schools here. My first thought when I heard all the high school activities were going to be canceled was, what is everyone going to do? What are we going to do? This took so much of our time. Well, a suggestion. Slow down a bit. And put God back in first place. I mean, if you do have more time, I know people will be busy with other things, but if you do have more time, right? Why not spend some of it with Jesus? There's a lot of people right now that need prayer. So why not, suggestion, as a family, if you're with family at home, pray the rosary each day. Pray the rosary each day. If you don't know how to pray the rosary, and I know a lot of you don't, there are brochures out there. There's even free rosaries hanging on the wall. Pray the rosary each day for an end to this pandemic. And pray for those who are suffering from the disease. Pray for healthcare workers and public officials that are making important decisions. Pray for your pastor so that I don't get sick with anything. So I really want to be able to keep serving you without being quarantined over in my house. So pray for me and pray for our parish. And you might even, as another suggestion, come here and pray in the church. You know, if you're trying to exercise social distancing, as they're calling it, and trying to avoid being near other people, you can come here during the day when there's not Mass, and it's usually empty, except for Jesus, of course, and all the angels and saints, right? Or you could join us for adoration. Still plan to do that according to the schedule, and there's not a lot of people here for that, so there's plenty of room for us to spread out if you want to. There's kind of a related warning to this, though, that I want to offer about how we spend our time. And I'm preaching to myself, too. Don't lose it, as is often tempting, your time. Don't lose it to social media and news coverage, right? Because right now, social media and news coverage is just in full panic mode. Stay informed, of course, right? But shut it off once we have the basic facts for the day. Otherwise, we're just going to raise our level of anxiety unnecessarily. We got to know what's going on. That's important. But don't spend hours, as I did a couple days ago, watching YouTube videos about the virus and scrolling through Twitter things about it and watching news. And it's good to know what's going on, but we can't let ourselves get stuck in kind of a media-fueled spiral of anxiety. Instead, offer some of that time again to Jesus, to your neighbors, and to family. And that brings me to the second benefit of these circumstances that I thought of. This time calls us to charity, to be there for others. And this is great. It's Jesus' second greatest commandment. Love our neighbors, right? Don't forget it. But I do worry about it in times like this, because I kind of worry we might start to fear each other, right? We might fear being near anyone. And we might do this to the point of maybe neglecting those who are in need. These circumstances call us to just the opposite. True, it might not be a good idea for a while, depending, to have physical contact with the sick or those who are maybe vulnerable to getting sick. But within whatever is prudent and reasonable, we should do whatever we can to support those in need. Let them know that they're loved. So, in difficult times, just remember to stick together. Third and finally, last of these, maybe sort of a benefit of what could be a benefit of this set of circumstances, is that it reminds us we're going to die. Might not think that that's the greatest benefit. There's a story related to this. When the discalced Carmelite nuns moved down by Hague, when I was the pastor down there, just before they were cloistered, before they closed the doors so nobody could come in but them, they offered tours of their monastery to the public. And so I was in there touring this place. And as we walked into the dining room during the tour, there was a human skull on the dining room table. And I kind of wanted to ask Mother, who's for dinner? But I thought, well, maybe that's not the most appropriate question. It was a plaster model, of course, but it looked real enough. Mother saw that I was looking at it, and she actually offered to have the nuns make a plaster copy of it for me to take home so I could have it at my house. I told them I didn't want to trouble them. But why do these nuns have a skull on their dining room table? Well, it's so that as they enjoy this life, as they enjoy their company, as they're at meals, they remember the shortness of their lives. They want to be reminded constantly of the need to be prepared for judgment and for the enjoyment of eternal life. My point is, it's good to remember that someday every one of us will die, and that's okay. For the youngest of us, that actually might be an entire century from now. For the oldest of us, could be much sooner. But none of us honestly knows if we're even going to be here tomorrow, whether there's a frightening new virus around or not. Remembering this, our mortality, I think it encourages us to get right with God and to live as He demands of us. And to do that, always, at least as best as we can, right? This can be maybe a little frightening to think of. But don't forget, we have great hope in Jesus Christ of a life that is infinitely better than this one. As St. Paul put it in 1 Corinthians, eye has not seen, and ear has not heard what God has prepared for those who love Him. So heaven, it's greater than anything we've ever heard or seen. It's greater than we can imagine. And as he wrote in Romans, if then we have died with Christ, we believe that we shall also live with Him. And again, he writes, I consider that the sufferings of this present life are as nothing compared with the glory to be revealed in us. And so on. So yeah, this virus, it's a reminder to us of our mortality. And it is unfortunate, it's sad that some people are dying sooner than they would have if the virus had not arrived. And we ought to do everything we can to help those who are sick, right? Everything reasonable and morally acceptable that we can. We should do that. But we should always also remember, now and at any time in our lives, that the goal really is heaven. It's not just the here and now. So those are 3 benefits that I thought of anyway, that might come from this terrible set of circumstances we find ourselves in these days. Freedom from idols, an opportunity for charity, and it's a reminder of our own mortality. So is the Lord in our midst or not? Yes, He's definitely here. And now, and as always, we have many opportunities to grow in our faith and trust in Him. Amen.